Hey friends, welcome to the 360 Experience podcast and my conversation with Mike Stoddart. Now, I want to just give you a little brief overview of Mike and who he is, and then he'll share the rest once we get going together. Mike is a really brilliant man. He has been in the mortgage business for more than 30 years now. In that period of time, he's run many companies, including his own. He was also a top producing originator back in the 1990s. I've had the great pleasure of getting to know Mike quite intimately over the past 5 years or so as a client of mine. We've done a lot of wonderful work together, and it is definitely an honor to know him. I think you're going to find today's conversation to be incredibly thought-provoking. I think you're going to learn some new ways to go out and get business right now that maybe you haven't thought of. He and I certainly were in sync with a lot of the same principles, and I think we were able to uncover some really great ideas in this dialogue. I hope you enjoy the show. Before we get to the show, I have to ask you personally for a favor. If you like what we're doing here, I'd really appreciate it if you could support us by subscribing to the podcast on whatever the mechanism is that you're listening to it on. If you're on YouTube, it would be really helpful if you like the show or if you have questions to make comments. If you're on Spotify or Apple or Google Podcasts, it'd be really great for you to like the show and support us in that way. It's going to be a way that I'm going to be able to continue to get great guests. I mean, the more people, this is the name of the game in the podcast space, is the more people that are viewing the show, the easier it is for me to go out and find people that you're going to really love and learn from. Finally, let me say that in the show notes of this episode, you will be able to go to the link that will take you to where you could get the post coaching of not only this episode with Mike Stoddart, but also all the previous episodes in the 360 Experience. After the episode is over, I take about 20 minutes to synthesize my notes and really break down for you some of the key points and to embellish and add some further value, hopefully to you, that you will receive. And now, without further ado, my conversation with Mike Stoddart. What are the common denominators of top originators in the mortgage business? They're well scripted. They have a system for marketing themselves that generates leads. They manage an effective database and they have strong referral partner relationships. The other common denominator of many great originators is that they have a business and life plan, a roadmap, a guide for them to achieve success, and they have an ally, a coach, who assists them in the successful implementation of that plan. Performance Experts Performance Accelerator private one-on-one, one-year coaching program is now accepting applications. This is my company, and these are my certified coaches that specialize in the mortgage business. Go to www.mortgagecoachingnow.com and click on Get a Coach, or go to the show notes and click on the link that's provided in this episode. Now let's get back to the show. Mikey, what's happening, man? Good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Tim. Thanks for having me on the show.
And you are where right now?
I am at my home in northern Idaho, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho.
You love it there, don't you?
I really do. It was a COVID move for me. I'd always dreamed of living here, been here almost 3 years now, and it's everything that I had ever hoped it would be.
What do you love about it? Like, what are some of the, I mean, I know the answer to the question, but because we've talked about it, but I'd love for the listeners to get to know you a little bit better by understanding what lights you up.
I love the outdoors, whether that's kayaking or hiking, fishing, camping. I just like being in the outdoors. I love the pine trees. I love the seasons. Just really everything about the outdoors just speaks to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It feels to me like for you, that's the respite that you need from like the intensity of life. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of like a total shift and a downshift from what I do on a day-to-day basis. I've had so many times that people have said, well, I really don't picture you kind of as this mountain man-ish type of person. I'm like, no, it's not all suits and spreadsheets and things like that. And so, yeah, for me, I feel that it just kind of balances me out so I don't get too far into the business side of things.
Yeah, I think that's a really important footnote. I mean, I know a lot of people, I'm sure you do too, who are just kind of one way and have not found their respite, their freedom in another activity that just has them checking out from their head and moving into a different kind of energetic experience. That's super cool that you've found that for yourself. I also know that you like cold weather too, because you told me about Norway.
I do love cold weather, but I would say that it hasn't always been this way in my life. I mean, it's something that I think I learned along the way. because I was way too far at one point in my time, just one dimensional in work. And everything was about work and everything else suffered, you know?
Well, like, so as you found more equilibrium, more balance with work and this ability to access things that take you out of your work mind and bring you into a space of relaxation, have you found that your work effectiveness has suffered?
It really hasn't at all. It was a story that I told myself for a long time. This is what the job required. And because I was the breadwinner, because I was responsible, because I was all of these things I was telling myself, I put that first and I let everything else suffer. And now I balanced it and I found that, you know what, it wasn't true at all.
It's a good thing to unpack a little bit. I mean, I do think that there's that belief system that a lot of people have, high achievers especially, that are type A personalities that have gotten everything that they have in their life as a result of, head down, grinding hard. And it creates a couple of dynamics. One is that they don't really even know who to be when they're not doing that. And then secondly, as I think underneath that is oftentimes a fear that, if I put this down for even a weekend, or a week without checking in, that somehow the house of cards is going to crumble. And I actually find that for me, I'm more effective if I do have these momentary periods where I just unplug for a while and refuel. Otherwise, I'm just operating on a depleted set of tires, man. No tread on them. If you wear the tread out every once in a while, you have to take a pit stop and change the tires, right?
Yeah, no doubt about it. Definitely is the case. As I kind of think back about that concept, there were times that I decided that I was going to take a trip, with a family, and I was gone for a week. And I was looking for the evidences that I was right. And I could come home and I could find them, right? There were things that piled up and things that went sideways. And so I was using that to say, see, I do need to double down. I need to triple down on this. But I think the most important shift in my mind was redefining, what does success mean?
Oh,
If
yeah.
success means number of dollars in a bank account, then maybe the path I was on was the right path. If success means the relationship I have with my children, if success means the peace that I have in my heart, then it wasn't the right path. So I think it's just a redefining of what does success mean for someone who's really driven to achieve.
Oh, man, that's such an important thing that you just said right there. I remember when I was in school at the University of Santa Monica, I had a similar experience with a different topic in my life, which was I was working out with a trainer. I hadn't worked out with a trainer in years. And, I was in my early to mid 40s at the time. And I was getting, pretty ripped and pretty big and strong. And like him, and he was pushing me hard and I was grinding hard for about 6, 8 months. And what I saw in the mirror was something that looked really good. But when I got out of bed in the morning, I could hardly even stand up erect without excruciating pain. I mean, my entire body was just hurting. And I had to go through this process of saying, all right, wait a minute, what's my definition of being healthy? Is it how I look or is it how I feel? And when I started really looking at it through that lens of like, no, my definition of being healthy is just like getting out of bed in the morning and having no aches and pains and feeling vibrant and having a high energy set. It really changed my entire outlook on working out, similar to the way that, your outlook to work has changed because you've redefined what success is. So I really love that you shared that. When I was reading your bio, I didn't realize you and I started in the business the same year, 1992.
Yeah, you're as old as me, Tim. It's
Easy,
scary.
easy, dude, easy. Wait, how old are you?
52.
I'm fucking 4 years older than you, man. I'm 56. So you started younger than I did. You must have been like 21 years old or something, because I think I was about 25 when I started. So we've been through everything that, we've been through all the same stuff, right? So like 94, 99. I really wasn't in the mortgage business in 07, 08, but you were. You started as an originator and worked your way up to what is currently a role as a CEO of a major mortgage company, and you've held that role for several mortgage companies. So just give us a quick little, 100,000 foot timeline of your career, 92, then on to the present moment.
Yeah, so 92, I started as an originator. Actually started at a hard money lender.
Okay.
So that was but I loved it, right? I was able to cut my teeth on couple of principles. Number one is, I'll tell you what, if you have to sell points and fees, it's a great place to learn how to sell points and fees. because you got balloons, but it also taught me that there has to be a second sale, right? I had to turn around and I had to sell this private investor. And a lot of times they were just individuals on why this was a good loan. So I did that, decided that I wanted to move into the residential space, and I was young and I didn't know what I didn't know. And so I just got a list of the top 10 agents and thought, well, this is going to be my clientele. Fast forward 6 months later, I had like the number one and the number three agents in town giving me all of their business because I just didn't know that I wasn't supposed to be able to do that, right? I didn't know that they probably had a relationship that they were never going to move from. And so I just went in blindly. Quickly became.
Wait, before you go though, hold on,
Yeah.
like begs a question, like how did you get these agents to send you business? What was your value proposition?
Here's what I found, Tim, is that the value proposition really isn't as much about what I want is what they want and what they need, right? Any relationship is bidirectional, but I need to know what they need, not just simply sell them on what I want. And so the top agent at the time, her name was Jeannie, and she was really one of these agents that was so focused on information, status updates and things like that. You remember, Tim, this was prior to automated systems that got to do everything. So we had to do
Fax
updates the
machines.
hard way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fax machines. Yeah.
And and so I learned that about her. So what I did is I went into her office and I went to the receptionist and I said, here's what I need you to do. I made friends with her, said, every time Jeannie opens an escrow, I want you to let me know. I don't need the name. I don't need the address. I don't need anything else. And what I started doing is every time she opened an escrow, I said, hey, Jeannie, congratulations on opening the escrow. If you were dealing with me, your loan would have been submitted for underwriting today. And I did those updates all the way through. If you're working with me, this is the status update I would have given you. This is what would be happening all the way through. And I would have said, if you're working with me, we'd be ready to close now, or you. And I did that on 6, 7, 8 transactions. And she called me and she said, do you really do this, Mike? I'm like, I'm doing it now. And I don't even have your business. So she gave me a shot, and that's all that it took. I just found out what it was that she wanted, and I delivered to her what she wanted.
Did she ever call you a stalker?
I've been called that before, but no, she didn't.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Like that just speaks to the importance of just simple blocking and tackling sales strategies, right? I mean, it's a lost art, especially in today's day and age where everybody's doing everything on video and mediums other than belly to belly, and the resourcefulness that is sometimes required to be flexible and malleable with what people need. I love that you highlighted that because, I mean, it also speaks to, not one size fits all, right? Like not everybody wants the same thing. So taking the time to really get to know the person and understand where their pain points are, and then being able to provide a solution to that has everything to do with your success. So I hijacked you. Keep going. I had to ask a question though about how you got these 2 agents to give you business. Yeah. So thanks for giving us an example.
No, I love it. I think it is really an important point because it is very specific. When I'm coaching and teaching originators, I always talk about, I liken things to dating a lot, right? So let's say I go into a club. What do I do? Sit there with a stack of papers with my bio and just start passing it out to every girl in the club? No, I have to find out who I'm interested in getting connected with. And then I have to create a sales pitch, if you will, to that person, right? That resonates. So I think it's a really important point. That's how you win it. It's not just this broad-based thing. It's definitely more of a rifle versus a shotgun approach.
And let's not forget, in this club that you're referring to, this metaphorical club, which by the way, I love the analogy and I've used it myself, is everybody in there is married. Okay. Like very few of those people that are in that club are single. So you've got to be interesting enough to where they want to break up with their existing relationship. There aren't any good realtors that don't have a lender that they send business to. So why should we think that just because we pass out the flyer and our business card and we show up a couple of times that they should throw us a bone and give us a shot? No, we got to be patient. We need to be strategic, and we need to be in the right place at the right time. So when they do have a falling out and they are interested in cheating, if we're going to stick with this analogy, you're the one they cheat with. Keep going. I like where this is going already, by the way. I mean, I have a strange feeling this is going to get fun. Keep going.
This is a hell of a lot of fun already. Yeah, we can really take it from there, for sure. Anyway, so going back to there, I had a business partner. His name is Lynn. we decided, you know what, I want to control the experience that my customers have. I really didn't like the space of when I say that we're going to be out of underwriting, maybe things didn't come out of underwriting. So we started our own company in 1994. And it was just a couple of us. We shared a team, and we just really ran our team. And we ended up getting this little MSA in-house relationship with the largest company in town at the time in Las Vegas. And we became known as just like this amazing mortgage company. And so we started having loan officers show up at our doorstep, like, "Hey, you've got a great reputation. Can we work here?" So you know what? I fell into the same trap as every person does in growing an office. Like, oh, that'd be great. If you come in and cover the bills, I just get to keep more of what I'm doing. And I found that I spend all of my time fixing their deals and everything else. So that didn't work for me at all. I thought, I need to up level the level of originators I'm bringing in, but those people didn't want to work for me because they were afraid I was competition. And so I made a decision that I was going to move away from my origination book and I was going to really focus on working with all of these originators, right? And what I found, Tim, is that I got more satisfaction of seeing what they could become and helping them unlock their potential than I got out of being the number one agent in town. I really didn't care as much about that. It really wasn't filling my why as much as helping people that could become, right? So we did that. We had the number one share in Las Vegas for resale transactions for years and years. We beat countrywide every single month.
And were
for
you a
market
broker? Were you a broker or a banker?
Banker. We were a bank.
When you
Control.
started your own company, you immediately became a banker.
We immediately threw in enough money to become a bank for sure. Control freak a little bit, admittedly. And, so we just kind of grew that. We grew it into a pretty decent sized company. That company did multi-billions of dollars a year, was in the top 30 in the nation. And then, of course, financial meltdown, fast forward to 2007 hits. And we were probably one of the earlier casualties there. We had bypassed a lot of the aggregators, whether that was, the Aurora, the Credit Suisse, whoever it was. We were doing our direct securitizations. So when the liquidity on the street dried up, we were probably the canary in the coal mine of that. So that company closed down. And from that point in time forward, Tim, I just kind of turned a little bit more into a mercenary. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to help people grow their companies. So I've just kind of been doing that shop by shop, looking at places that are doing 20 million a month, 30 million a month, and growing them into multi-billion-dollar organizations. And that's kind of how I've etched my little niche into the industry, if you will.
And just for the listener's point of reference, just name a couple of the companies that you've done that with. So, or your company that you dissolved in 2007, just so some people say, "Oh, I remember that company," and didn't know you were there.
The first place I went was Gateway out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. They were a little teeny company at the time, and they've been wildly successful. And Kevin, a few years back, became the governor of Oklahoma, and he's enjoying life. Security National out of Salt Lake. Leader One out of Kansas City, and then a brief stint over at Celebrity, and now into Luminate Home Loans.
So it was interesting because I was tracking with you and I was like, shit, we've had very similar career paths, except for my way was, excuse me while I clear my throat here. Sorry about that. My way was that I decided kind of the opposite of you, which is I don't want to help other people grow. I want to be the best damn loan officer I can be. And I want to have originators on my team that are super independent and only will just learn from me through osmosis, from being in the same work environment, for me creating a really healthy, vibrant culture within the workspace. And therefore I only hired top producers. But there's a couple of things that you said that I'd be curious about because we never talked about this. So control, I could not agree with you more. I think that as an originator, that's why I've said, and I just want to check in with you on, I think that the first hire that an originator should make when they get to that point where they're doing consistently, 6 loans a month, 7 loans, 5 loans, whatever it is, somewhere in that range, is their own processor. And the reason that I feel that that's so important is because I want to control the experience of my customer and anybody else that's involved in the transaction, i.e. the real estate agents and maybe the CPA and whoever else. So that's what I did. And in 94, hired my own processor, took the leap of faith. You know what 94 is like. It sucked. And what you don't know is that I lived in and was working in Northridge, California, and we had just had a 6.7 earthquake and, 40% of the houses were red tagged. So it was really hard when rates were at 9.5. But I finally got up the gumption. I was doing 3-4 loans, scratching and clawing to say, all right, I know that like I can't keep functioning in this situation where I've got a processor that is serving 4 different people, and 2 of those other 3 people that are not me are turning in really crappy files, and it's affecting ultimately my reputation indirectly but quite directly. So I'd be curious, and by the way, last thing I'll say is I have my processor do things for me because she didn't have enough business initially that would function also as, say, a personal assistant. I mean, they can always double duty there, like going and dropping off flyers at real estate offices on my behalf and introducing themselves and creating a special presentation, et cetera. But I'd be curious, like in today's market, if you believe that to be true. I've been coaching a few people lately that about this, hey, you're sharing a processor, and I know times are tough and everybody's had to right size, but the ultimate goal should be to control the deal, and you need to work towards that place. Do you agree with that? And do you have anything to add?
I do agree with that. And I think the challenge is because control isn't about doing, right? It's about oversight of certain key moments in time, the moments that matter in this transaction. And if I don't have that person that really reports to me, I can't control those. And then I would feel like I needed to actually run the relay race with them, right? And make sure that those things are happening until that person really comes over to my side of the equation. So, and I think that's a challenge that a lot of originators that I've worked with over the years have too, is a lot of people would totally resonate with, I'm a control freak too, but that doesn't mean that you have to do everything. It just means that you have to be in charge of the moments that matter and make sure that those moments that matter happen. And when you have shared resources, there's a struggle to do that consistently. And as soon as it doesn't happen 1 or 2 times, then the human nature is, well, yes, I better make sure that this happens. So now I need to make sure that every time an LE goes out, every time a CD goes out, I'm the one who does this because it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. So totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's that mentality of, the right way to phrase this is that if it can't be done right, I need to do it, essentially. Basically, like I need to do everything. And that's what creates a limitation on what you're capable of, because you can't scale your business from that place.
Yeah, it's these levels of complexity that people go through. Like you said, it's like, okay, 5, 6 deals and then 10 and then 20. Where are those levels of complexity and how do you break through those? And how many times have we heard a referral partner? And I cut my teeth in the real estate agent space. So, I'll use that as maybe an avatar for something that's broader. But how many times have I heard them say, well, Tim was really good until he got too busy, right? Well, there's a way that you have to get through that level of complexity. And what it is control of the right things, but not everything, because it's really impossible to close 30, 40 transactions in a month and do all of those functions. There literally isn't enough time in the day.
Yeah, that's why I've always said, that's really well articulated. And that's why I've always said to people that are considering being an L360, like, the jump, they'll be at like 10, let's say, or 12 or 15 closed loans a month. And I'll tell them, the jump from 15, I remember telling Caleb LeGrand this a long time ago, the jump from 15 to 30 is much easier than the jump from 5 to 10. It's much, much easier. It's actually just a few things that you need to let go of in most cases that are holding you back from taking that giant leap. But it is this almost like, it's almost like a snake shedding its skin, right? Like when you have different layers, and as you climb up the ladder of production, you have to continually refine your job description and make yours as finite as possible. But to your point, that doesn't mean giving up the control of the process. And I think that that's the key thing, is it needs to be a process. Do you want to speak to that at all?
Well, again, I would say, Tim, it has to do with the moments that matter. What are those times that really matter? What are the times when I get to lean forward and I get to say to the customer, see, this is what I was talking about, right? And I used to call them my pulse checkpoints, right? And there was 2 different purposes of my pulse checkpoints. Number 1 was to make sure that we were on track, because my goal for my team was, and has been for everyone I've coached since, I really want to be ready to close a week early. Doesn't mean that anyone's going to change close of escrow for me, but I want to be ready a week early, right? So I want to find out really early on if there's anything that's off the rails and it's not on that happy path anymore. And what are we going to do as a team to get it back on the path? So I check that. And I also check the times that we're really driving, again, those moments that matter, making sure that I'm getting the introductions and the referrals from everybody along the way, making sure that people feel that they've got the education, the financial literacy for me that I wanted them to have, that the expectations have been met, or if they haven't been met, how we reset those so that we can turn that into success. So those are the times that I want to make sure that I am, if not controlling directly, at least making sure that I have a very good feel for that those things are happening when I need them to happen.
Yeah, it's that setting, it's that intentionality of setting yourself up to be able to provide good news, right? Like if you can close a week early and you let people know, hey, just so you know, I'm good to go to close. I'm not suggesting that we have to close a week early, but I'm ready. That never is going to hurt your reputation. It's just going to make them feel more at ease and more confident in you. So what are some of the moments that matter? Would you like to share a couple of those and maybe get a little tactical with us in terms of how to leverage them?
Sure. Maybe the first thing I'd like to do is go through, expectations. I think expectation setting is the most critical aspect of the entire transaction. Undefined expectations lead to resentments 100% of the time. And that can be as something as simple as, I'm giving somebody a quote and I'm saying today, okay, well, my rate's 6.25. And like, ooh, well, so-and-so I heard had 6 1/8, but I'm willing to work with you. Okay, well, I can let that go, right? And hope that everything goes great. But if I give them 6 1/8 later on, an eighth better than what I quoted them today, all they're thinking is I'm just average. All I did was meet what somebody else had to say, right? And I'm going to always reset and reclaim those expectations by saying, well, wait a minute. No, if I give you 6 1/4, I'm doing an amazing job. And the value that you're getting for that, you should be grateful for, in essence. I don't know that I exactly put it like that, but you should be grateful for that. And if I ever give you 6 1/8, it's because I'm the best originator you've ever met in your life. So that it just changes that same eventual outcome from a thought process of that's what I thought I should have had to begin with to he's amazing, right? So, and I think when we talk about tactically, what are those times? It's really focused on when are the times that those expectations can go sideways. They definitely have to do with, quoting rates, they have to do with documents and things like that. But for me, very tactically, I think one of the lost arts, Tim, and I know you and I have talked about this before. I think this is a lost art, and that's referrals. I think most of the originators today are not really great at getting referrals in the live transaction. And, for my team, if we didn't get at least 3 from every single person that we did a loan for, I consider that a failure on our side.
So this would be I don't want to presume you're talking about cross-selling the listing agent, the CPA, asking the borrower for referrals intentionally. I presume that what you're talking about is at that moment of power, when you are delivering the good news to the buyer's agent who referred the deal to you or not, you're also at that same time simultaneously asking them, hey, who else are you working with right now that we should be talking to so we can provide this level of service to them? Those types of things.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to leverage everything that we're doing. It's not an easy business, right? So why do I want to have to go out and cold call all the time? I don't. I would much rather leverage what I have. So I want 3 referrals from every borrower that are other borrowers. And I had an expectation of definitely winning listing agents as well as other things as well, all the way through the transaction. And I set up the compensation of my team to drive those behaviors as well. So it wasn't just on me. And there's also a really interesting art to those things. It's kind of like the psychology of how do we get those. And I think the reason that most originators today aren't asking for those referrals is because they're just saying, well, hey, if I need you to refer someone to me, every single person's going to say, no, I don't have anyone. Why are they saying that? Well, because they don't know that they have the relationship with somebody to say, hey, this is who you should talk to for a loan. And B, they just don't want their friends to call them up and go, what the hell did you sick this salesperson on me for, right? So it's the psychology of helping people understand, well, how do you go about doing that in such a way that there isn't that obstacle, that people want to share those individuals with you and achieve that same goal, if that makes sense.
And what is that like? What is that approach that has the person putting aside any resistance that they had because they have fear that somehow it'll be a bad reflection on them, or don't know, maybe just don't even, they can't get their head around who they might introduce you to. What's the way that you suggest that originator kind of overcomes those things?
I think that for the customer, if we put ourselves in their shoes, it's fear of unknown. So first of all, I never call it a referral. I always called it an introduction. And then I defined what it was that I was going to say and do, and would show them what I would say and do, and made it super benign. And then I also helped them with scripting without telling them that I was helping with scripting, meaning, hey, Tim, I understand that you might feel a little uncomfortable of, giving me a name that I'm going to reach out to because you don't know what am I going to say, and you don't want your friend to go, what are you doing? Leave me alone. So I just wanted to let you know that, here's the value of what we're providing. This is what I'm going to say. And you can see that there's nothing in there. It's not a hard sale or anything else. This is what I'm going to say and what I'm going to provide. And you know what? If they ever call you and say, why in the world did you do this? Here's what you can say, right? And help them through that thought process. And so often, that aspect of helping script people into how they're going to handle things that come up is incredibly valuable. I would even take us all the way back to the beginning with when I got the business from Jeannie. I had to help her because she didn't know what to tell her originator that she'd been using for 15 years. I had to tell her what to say because she had no idea how to communicate that.
This is a thought just came into my head. Like, I'm wondering how you feel about this. I've never done this, but it would seem to be an interesting idea to even draft a very simple 3-sentence email that you write on behalf of your borrower that is kind and non-aggressive and shares very briefly about the value proposition, if you will, of you as an originator. And then when you have this conversation with them, say, I'm going to send you a very brief email that if you like the way that it's written, you can just simply copy and paste it and make the introduction this way to your friend and myself via email. And you just draft this email of like, hey, Mike, it's Tim, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to introduce you to my mortgage professional, Caleb LeGrand. Just had a terrific experience in working with him, and there's some things that he's done that have been very valuable to my family and I thought it would be a good idea for you guys to connect, or just something like that. Because one of the things that back in the day as a broker, I don't know how you're going to feel about this as a lifelong mortgage banker, but I used to do a very effective job of rewriting people's loans and no points, no fees refis, and became known in my entire client database as being somebody who would rewrite your loan for you for free when we had a significant enough of a drop in interest rates. That became incredibly easy as the entry point of another introduction. So somebody would thank me for it. I'd say, hey, it's my pleasure. And if you know anybody who you think would find value in me providing this service to them, as your friend, I'd be willing to do that for them too. They're not just a off the street person. It's a relationship that you have, which I would value. So it makes them almost feel like they have something special to offer, and makes them feel good about the fact that they can offer it because of their connection with me, if that makes sense. And I got tons of referrals that way, but you're absolutely right. Like, they don't know how to refer. And they don't know what you're going to say. And I think that both those things are incredibly important. So you need to dispel some of that. So you think that the reason I was going to ask this question, you kind of answered it, but I'm going to ask it again and just check in and see if you have any other thoughts on it, is why do you think so many loan originators are reluctant to ask for referrals and to generate referrals on every deal in the way that you're talking about?
I think that it's just not comfortable for them. I don't think that they've ever really spent the time trying to figure out how to do it where they're not just having the objections. And so it's just not a habit, right? And the reality is we've had such a great time of things for a long time that they haven't needed to, right? You haven't had to get back to basics. Right now we have this situation in the world where, originators just getting their teeth kicked in and week out for the last year, right? And so now it's finally like, wow, there's no business to be had. Like, well, there is business to be had if you get back to basics. But one of the things I want to go back to something that you mentioned, though, that I found really effective is also removing the barrier of who is it that if a customer is trying to think of someone else that needs a mortgage loan today, that's a hard ask. And I used to tell them, look, there's only two kinds of people I need you to refer to me, and that's people with houses and people without houses. Other than that, everybody else is in good shape, right? And so, because my value proposition and how I'm going to communicate with them is like, I'm really on this journey with you of creating generational wealth through real estate from start to finish. So it doesn't matter if they don't have a home and maybe they are thinking that they're not going to buy a home for 20 years. I don't care. I'm going to help them now, and I'm going to send them information and educate them. So if and when that time comes, they're ready. It doesn't matter if they just closed on a new home. I need to help them so that they can find out, when is it time to get a rental property? When is it time to unlock some of the equity that they have? When is it time to talk about a reverse mortgage for their parents, right? I don't know. And so I remove those barriers because I think the industry has changed quite a bit. And it's really about, with the advent of Zillow and these things like that, and we fight for drops at the end of the funnel all of the time, right? It's more about database. I just need a big database. I just need you to introduce me to people, and then I will help educate them. And I want to be up there in front and help inception them into when it's time to engage in a transaction. So I'm there before they decide to start looking on Zillow, rather than, they run through Zillow, maybe get to a realtor who maybe gives them my card and two other people's cards. And, I'm just fighting for drips. I need to get up in the front of that.
That's huge what you just said. Absolutely huge. And in the coaching debrief of this podcast episode, I'm going to go ahead and deepen that, because I'm going to make a note of it and go deeper. I think that this is essential right now, is that you're adopting as many relationships as you possibly can. And the script that you gave about, like, there's only two kinds of people that I need you to refer to me, those that own a house and those that don't, is perfect, because it's humorous, and it also sends the right message. It takes the pressure off the referrer too. It's not like they have to, as you said, think about somebody right now who has a need. It's like, I'm not interested necessarily in somebody who has a need right now. I'm interested in a relationship that I can add value to long term, and the business will come as a result of it. The other thing that I want to hammer on that you said is, it's always struck me that there's never a time that you have a more captive audience to market to than when you're in a transaction with them. I mean, they have to look at everything that you send to them. The text messages, the video that you send, the phone call that you place, they have to take the call. And so it's like really seizing that opportunity for those 45 or 60 days to have a plan and a strategy to, in a very tactical way, connect with them at moments when you have some power and you have exceeded some expectations, hopefully, and then you can engage more fully in a conversation with them about the future of working together, which, is applicable to all of these different entities: realtors, accountants, financial planners, and certainly the borrowers. So when I think of Mike Stoddart, I think of, in addition to the fact that he's absolutely crazy in a Razor in the desert, driving like 75 miles an hour, flying over bumps, I think of a guy who's a terrific implementer. I mean, I in the years of doing Leadership 360, there are a few people that have taken action with their business and life plan as fully as you did, and as aggressively, I think is the right way of saying. I mean, you just, like, as Craig Strent has often accused me of, he's like, you eat MIGs for lunch. I would say the same about you. Like, you just, like, voraciously attacked your action items. And I know that you're passionate about teaching people how to implement. So I really want to spend a little bit of time there. What do you think makes you a good implementer? Let's start there.
When I talked about redefining success, I think it's a similar concept, and that is, success is more of a journey than it is a destination. Am I on the trajectory that's going to lead to success, or am I on a trajectory that's stagnant? And this is what I found quite often, is that when we look at an idea, we are on a mastermind and we have this great idea, or we create this MIG and it's big, right? And there's a lot of moving parts and it becomes overwhelming. And so we are spending all of this time, energy, and effort into trying to make this big thing happen. And one of the sayings that people who know me in business, I always say, it's a marathon, not a sprint, right? Let's take that, let's break it down into small bite-sized chunks, and let's just do incremental improvements, just like, microscopic habits, right? Let's do 1% incremental improvements. And it doesn't mean that we're punting on this great big MIG. It just simply means that we're going to start executing on something today, right now. This isn't something, take the PLP, right? This isn't something that we need to work on for the next 6 months and then roll out. I can take pieces of it and start implementing it today as I work towards it, in the versioning type of thing. So by the time a lot of people are like, okay, I'm ready to do this. I've had these meetings, I've gone through this, I've done through this, and now I'm going to try to roll this out. And then guess what? Doesn't matter how good we are at trying to create a plan, things go to hell in a handbasket as soon as I try to roll them out. Somebody's mad, somebody doesn't want to do this, something's broken, and then everyone wants to drop the entire process rather than just take these small pieces, get them in, make them a part of what we are and breathe and do, and then we go through. And I think to a great extent, that's why I feel that I'm really solid in that implementation, is because I'm able to go back to 50,000 feet, say, what can I control today? What can I implement today? And then I just take that entire MIG and I break it into a million different little projects, just like a big project plan.
So for those that don't know what the acronym MIG stands for in our vernacular, it's massive impact goal. So what we're talking about is something that is going to move the needle big time in your business and your life that you want to execute on, and what are all the action steps associated with the accomplishment of that MIG. What you're also doing there is building momentum. And I think momentum is a very underutilized word in the business vernacular, in the sense that it's almost a zero-sum game. There are a lot of people who have big, bold ideas and don't take action with any of it because they are paralyzed and overwhelmed, which is certainly understandable. I mean, we can all become overwhelmed with a big goal. And then they feel bad about themselves. And on a subconscious or even conscious level, they start to lose trust in their word that they're going to take action. And then they start running that narrative like, yeah, sure, you're going to lose 20 pounds. Like, you've never done it before. Why are you going to do it now? Or there's the opposite, which is what you're describing, is this, I'm going to take this big goal, I'm going to break down into bite-sized chunks, and I'm going to start taking action with the things I can right now and build some momentum, which will propel me to the next level. And it's kind of like, when you think about it, Mike, it's no different than like losing weight, like, or working out in combination with losing weight. It's like, you have to take action. And then ultimately, once you get that first compliment, right? Like, hey, have you lost weight? Or, hey, you look good. Or you just look in the mirror and you're like, I think I lost a little bit of weight. That's all. You got to get to that point. And then that's the catapult into following through, because now you've gotten the gain that, comes after the initial pain. Let's look at something other than a MIG though. Let's break that down, Mike, into I don't remember what your goals were. I know that you had a lot of reading that you were doing after our Costa Rica retreat. Something on a little bit more of a minor level, rather than something as big as the perfect loan process that you described. What about just taking action with, I want to add 3 really strong, loyal referral partners before the end of 2023? Like, how would you suggest someone break that down and build the momentum around that?
Well, first thing I would do is I would say, let's not focus on 3, let's focus on 1. Let's
There we
focus
go.
on one person at a time. So let's cut that all the way down to there. And then really it's kind of a matter of thought process, right? Where am I going? What am I looking for? Who am I looking for? Am I looking for anyone? What is it that I'm looking for? Where would I find that person? How would I interview that person? How would I communicate with that person? How would I get introduced to that person? How can I go about doing those things? And then I take it another step from there. It's like, okay, well, now that I understand that aspect of things, now I can create the material, or I can create the sales pitch back to the club, right? I can figure out what is my pitch to her going to be, right? And things like that. Here's one of the things that I would say on that particular thing, though, is I'm also going to look at what is it that we're doing today and how do I leverage what I'm doing today? Because everybody's busy. And so when we start talking about these things that are going to move the needle, like, okay, well, I have to spend extra energy. When am I going to carve out time? I'm going to time block extra time to do this. Well, if I'm already working 60, 70 hours a week, where am I going to find the time block to go and do that? So I would start with that one particularly and start thinking about, what am I doing today? And as an example in that space, one of the things that I used to do for realtor partners that I had, referral partners that I had, the expectation for them was to introduce me to somebody every year, a new person every year.
And you
They don't want
establish
to do that.
and you establish that expectation at the onset of the relationship?
I did. And for those that I didn't, because I kind of stumbled upon this a few years into my career, I reestablished, the value of what I was doing and how this relationship worked. Overcame the thing of like, yeah, they want me to be their best kept secret. They don't want to refer me out because they're afraid that I won't be able to give them the same service. So I had to show them how that won't happen and how I overcome that. And then that expectation. And then a mid-year check-in, I was able to say, hey, Tim, have I not done a good job this year? No, Mike, you've been doing an amazing job. Thanks, bro. Like, why would you ask? Well, because you haven't referred me to anybody yet. You haven't introduced me to another agent. And so, I can either spend most of my time right now to go and find that other referral partner instead of working on your loans, or you can just introduce me to somebody and then I can just keep doing what I'm really good at. And so there's a lot of different things like that. But I didn't mean to take us down that rabbit hole necessarily, but I think it's just the thought process of looking at, when I have that goal, how do I leverage what I'm doing? And how do I really go about it in bite-sized pieces?
No, I'm glad that you went there, Mike, because I think that I want to tease that apart a little bit and spend still a little bit more time here. I think you did a really eloquent job of me giving you a goal. And the first thing you did was cut the goal in thirds, and just said, look, let's just pick one. Okay. And then the second thing you did was you took a step back. And I think this is the key part. Like what I see in coaching people, and I was coaching somebody 2 days ago, and we were right here in this moment of, I don't know where to get started. Like that's like this paralysis of like, I know that I need to do this. I want to do this, but I don't know where to get started. And what I think that you did a great job of there is, first of all, making it more bite-sized. Secondly, is saying, hey, wait, before we make this hard, what are we doing right now that can be a catalyst to making this easy? Like, how about just asking anybody that respects you and reveres you to introduce you to someone? And by the way, we can take this out of the realm of just realtors, right? Like,
For sure.
you could ask CPAs to introduce you to other CPAs. You can ask realtors to introduce you to CPAs. You can ask, it goes all over the place. And I'm sure that when you were an originator, actually, let me check in with you on this, because of, you said you were realtor focused, but did you find that you had other terrific sources of referrals that were not realtors?
Yeah, probably my best referral source was a lady named Kathy at Bank of America.
Mm-hmm.
And she gave me so much just amazing, great business that the bank didn't want. And she was probably good for 6, 7 transactions a month. It was crazy.
Wow.
She was
That's
amazing.
big. But this is, let's play with this, man. Like right now, like that's the other thing is embedded in the lost art of selling and the lost art of asking for what you want and being scripted to do it is also the myopic approach to who is potentially a valuable relationship for me. Because I remember I ran a report, and I'll get the numbers a little bit wrong, but I'm in the right zip code for sure. And like after this 1 year, I was like, all right, I got 29.8% or something of my closed transactions last year from my realtor partners. And I had like 22.8% from this small bucket of CPAs. And I was like, whoa, wait a minute. Like I spent a lot of time, and if nobody from Russ was listening, a little bit of money, in fact, to get to nurture those realtor relationships. I spent hardly any time on the CPAs, and they were almost equal. And then I started looking broader, and I realized, gosh, I had these 2 local regional banks that the VP of the bank and its 3 branches that did only, land loans. Like I got like 2, 3 construction to perms every year from both of them. So now all of a sudden, and they were big ones, right? So it's like, there we go, 5-6 loans consistently, steady Eddie every year from that source. And then you bring up, like, nobody even thinks about going to the Bank of America loan originator. But the thing is, there's certain things they can't do, and they're not going to be able to do non-QM loans for you, or maybe even reverse mortgages. Who knows? I mean, so getting a little bit more strategic with our thought process, going back to the implementation piece, saying, wait, who do I know right now that might be able to introduce me to somebody else that could be a valuable referral source, a human resources director or whatever? You want to comment further on that? Because I feel like this is super important information in today's market.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's leverage. Let's say I have a 10,000 person database, right? And I wanted a new CPA partner, a new bank loan officer partner, a new realtor partner. It doesn't matter. What about just going to my database and saying, hey, who do you know? I am constantly amazed when I've worked with originators and we've gone through this process, the response that we get. We asked for one, I was working with Misty and we were asking for, hey, who do you know that was, I can't remember, I think it was financial planner. We got 15 referrals from our database. And like you've always said, Tim, well, that's a warm introduction. Hey, so-and-so says you're the person that I need to talk to. When can we chat? Or, here's some information or things like that. I don't need to go cold call. I hate cold calling. I'll do it if I have to, right? I mean, you and I have had those conversations. I remember the old days of standing with flyers out in front of the grocery store, passing them out till 8 o'clock at night, till I got my deal for the day. And I wasn't going to go home till I got my deal for the day, right?
Yep.
So I can do it, but I would much rather leverage what I have. In this lost art of the referral, if I can get 3-4 referrals from every single transaction that I do, and can get another 2 to 3 from those people again, right? I mean, I'm leveraging all of my effort. And then I'm going back and I'm establishing a value to the agent, right? And then it's back to the agent. Hey, Tim, thanks for the referral. By the way, here's a list of 7 names that I just added to our joint marketing database that are all tagged to your name. That's one of the values that I provide to you, right? I mean, now when I come to you as a referral partner and ask for an introduction to another referral partner, some of that value is already established. Like, yeah, what other originator out there, every time they get a deal, is letting the referring partner know that they just added 5, 6, 7 people to the joint marketing database that's going to go back their way if we can generate business out of it, right?
Well, that's big.
Leverage.
That's very big. And I mean, that's a strategy that I've never heard, and I've heard I thought I heard it all, but that's a really good one. I hope everybody took note of that one. Making sure that they know what you do that brings value to them is something that we should not forget. Like, a lot of originators are afraid, or just don't think of it, about making sure that the people that they want to refer business to them not only know how to do it, but know why they should do it and the value that it will bring back to them. So every deal you refer to me, I'm going to get 5 or 6 more people added to our mutual marketing database. And here's how I do it is brilliant. That's huge. What would it be like to spend an entire year with 3 coaches, including myself, and 11 top producing originators from around the country, to go on an 8-day business and life planning retreat in Costa Rica, and to spend 4 days at my home in Southern California with a lot of coaching in between? The Leadership 360 Signature Program, our hallmark program that we've been doing for 10 years now, is now accepting applications for Group 11. We only take 12 people a year. This is the only private one-on-one coaching that I do at this point. Go to www.leadership360now.com or go to the show notes and click on the link and apply, and we'll get together. We'll set up an interview, and we'll start to have a conversation. Now, back to the show. Who do you know who? I remember, so like when I started, 4 different brokerage companies, the 4th being my own. And, along the way, was introduced to a cast of characters, man. Like, I mean, people that were doing shady shit, people that were, really good hardcore salespeople, people that were good marketers. And I remember the owner of my third company introduced me to that phrase, who do you know who? And the difference between do you know someone? See, if I say, do you know a realtor that you can refer me to? Like, you can come back easily with just no. But who do you know, by asking the question that way, causes the person to have to think and scan their thought process a little bit about who, go beyond that of just this. So if it's just, hey, who do you know that I should know, that I could be able to help, and that I might be able to create a mutually beneficial relationship with based upon what you know about how I work? Like, that's an expansive question that could provoke a myriad of different possibilities. It's funny because we know so many of the same people. I mean, you look at like Grossman, he's just such a master networker, and I have a guy in my life named Steve Silverman, who's a dear friend of mine. He's been like a second father to me for sure. Owned 2 companies with him, met him when I was 26. So here I am 30 years later and still very close with him. He's my attorney. His entire career of success is built really on just one principle, which is, who do I know that I can introduce this person to? Think about that dynamic for a minute. What if you're embodying, and I think Grossman does this very well as well. So if you're embodying this thought process within yourself of, who do I know that I can introduce anybody that I meet to that could be a mutually beneficial connection, it's all going to come back to you. People are going to love you for it. I mean, it's not a skill that I possess very naturally, although I'm getting better at it because I'm more intentional with it. I just think that some people are so consumed in their own little world that they're not thinking about how they could just help others, and then the result will come back, right? You have any thoughts on that?
I do. What's coming up for me right now is something that I've kind of been working on that I think is a very big component of what the future is going to look like for us as originators. And it's going to be changing the dynamic to where we're a connector of people rather than we are just simply, an originator. And so I've been working on a lot of stuff that's like, how do I create a tribe mentality with this database, right? So that they're helping each other, with me kind of being the middleman in here. Who do you know who? So what is it that you need, right? It doesn't matter if you need a referral to a pediatrician or whatever it is. How do I connect them and create that tribe mentality so that we're all looking out for each other? And then that makes it really easy. And, honestly, Tim, where the first thought of that in my career came way back when I was an originator, and unknowingly, in case anyone's listening, I started doing loans for the mob. I didn't know that in Vegas. And
so supposedly you didn't know that. Well, we'll go with that story.
We're going to stick with that no matter what.
But I'm going to do a little bit of background research just to make sure it's factual.
But, from there, it was kind of amazing because they really have that tribe mentality, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to ask for referrals. I was getting calls like, hey, this is Paulie from the car wash. Joey says you can help, right? And I'm like, you bet, Paulie, I can totally help. And it just constantly we're referring, what do you need? Do you need this? Do you need that? And, of course, I was like, I really don't need a lot of favors because I don't want to be on the hook for repayment of all of those favors. But it really helped me understand, though, that this was a group of individuals who really, their focus was looking out for each other. And I think if we can create that tribe mentality with all of the people that we help as we're going about our business, we've got an unstoppable level of momentum, right?
Oh my gosh,
who do you know
yeah.
who? If I got 10,000 people thinking, who do I know who? I can find anything. I literally can find anything with 10,000 people.
Yeah, I think I have a episode of the 360 experience with that I want you to listen to that you're going to love. It'll be aired on May 1st, and we're recording here today on April the 14th. So it'll be before yours is aired, with a dear friend, the guy that got me into the mortgage business. His name is Chris Chudikoff. And he and I were fraternity brothers, and we recently reconnected. He still does loans very successfully. His entire approach is what we're talking about. He's a part of a couple of networking groups that he pays a decent chunk of change. It's not actually all that exorbitant. It's like, I think he said it was like $3,500 a year to be in the group. And they meet once a month in a defined location. It's all business professionals, and it's just all about referring. Now, the thing is that if you're referring in the way that the mob refers, as you described it, I've spent plenty of time in Southern Italy, so I know exactly how the game works. If you're referring in that way, you start to, after a while, feel a little bit uncomfortable because of the law of reciprocity. You feel like, well, shit, I got to figure out a way to make Mike right here. I mean, he's introduced me to two really important people in the last 2 years that have had like a nice impact on my life, whether it be, and by the way, it doesn't have to just be an impact on my financial life, to your point of like a veterinarian. It could be actually just, you know what, I want you, like I remember when I met Mike Watson. I don't know if you know Mike, he's with Benchmark. He's not currently in Masters, but I immediately said to myself, Mike Watson and Greg Kingsbury need to know each other. Like these two guys are going to love each other. They're going to be best pals. And they do love each other and they stay in contact with each other. That's valuable to just make an introduction to two people that you think will get along well because they have the same sense of humor, favorite sports team, same amount of hobbies. It doesn't matter. Just be the connector, because if you make a positive impact on somebody's life, they're going to want to reciprocate. And it also opens up the door for the conversation of like, hey, would you like for me to share with you, how I'd like to be referred or how to introduce someone to me? I mean, we even deal with that in L360, right? I mean, so much, if not 100% of our L360 members come vis-a-vis referral from our existing people like yourself. We have to sometimes say, hey, here's how we would like you to make the referral, because it puts us in a situation where we can start to have a meaningful dialogue with the person. So, wow, like I feel like we should keep going on this, man, and brainstorming. What other thoughts do you have on this tribal mafia? I don't think you should call it tribal. I think you should call it, mafia mentality, because I think it's actually so true though. That is how, old world, old school. It's not just Italian mafia, but that's how like the different immigrants, when they came to this country. Like even when I was just recently in New York last week with Liz and the kids, it's so cool in New York that like you have like the Chinese neighborhood and you have the Italian neighborhood and you have the Jewish neighborhood, and you can see how these people are helping each other. They're interacting with each other. They use each other's services. They're creating this, this circle, this tribe circle of, and that they're at the center of, and that they're like, there's spokes off of it to them. So any other great, brilliant thoughts since you brought this up, or we can brainstorm it out even further if you want.
Well, I sure, absolutely. I mean, full disclosure, I kind of have an interest in a fintech company that's kind of trying to do a lot of this stuff right now, where it's really just about connecting people. But I think the point would be anyone can really do it. If we look at our database of the people that we've helped, what percent of them are self-employed, small business owners? How would those people feel if we could say, hey, you know what, as part of what we're trying to do for our family here is I want to help you get business, right? You're getting business. Maybe you're going to Angie's List or you're going wherever it is, and they're scraping 20-30% of a deal. What if we were just able to get out to our database and say, hey, this is part of our family. These are the groups we'd like to support. And then let everybody start to add to that mentality. It's like, hey, we're trying to figure out a way to not only support the members of our family here, but drive down their costs to get that business and pass on that savings to you. How do we create this little barter system, if we will, within our group? How do we really create a space where everyone feels free to say, hey, I'm moving to a new place and I don't know who a good pediatrician is. Who do you recommend? Who's someone good to do my hair? Like, I don't know. When we moved to Idaho, and Misty came from Southern California, she's like, who in the world's going to do my hair? There's no one that knows how to do California hair up here. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Right. But what if we could find a way to harness that? And I think that's the concept. It's just to go more and more in that space. And if we could do that, right, through an app or some other way where now I have this database, this family that's thinking about me all the time because they're really utilizing me for all kinds of things instead of just, hey, well, I guess I'll talk to you in 6 years when I'm ready to do a rental property or, redo something. And kind of your old script of like, hey, it's Tim and it's time, which is great, right? We're setting up that transaction, but now I'm constantly having that originator in front of me. I am the connector of people.
First of all, you found great person to do your hair. It's looking sweet. That's the first thing I want to say. You found the
It
right
wasn't mine, but
You got it. Well, I don't know how many iterations you had to go through, but you found the right person. I want to give the listener a couple of tactical examples here in a second. But what I heard you say there also is that you can't be, I'm going to think of how to string this together, but you can't be known as the person that your database should go to as a resource until you've displayed it. They're not going to know. They're not going to be able to on their own make that connection of, well, I think I'll call my mortgage professional to introduce me to a life insurance agent. That's too far of a cavern that they have to cross on their own. But
for sure,
if you are consistently positioning yourself as being that resource, that conduit, then they will naturally start to think, I should call Mike. I bet he knows somebody, right? Because he's known somebody in other occasions that I hadn't thought of. So a couple of things that I did, super tactical, but like I used to write my own newsletter for years. Once a quarter, it was a 4-page, really well-written newsletter called Homes and Money. And I would always have a referral source write an article for it. And I started to get really creative with that. I mean, it started with a financial planner writing an article, and then a CPA, and then an insurance agent. Then I started having restaurant owners that I knew and liked, writing a cooking tutorial with a recipe at the end. And people were like, this is great, right? And then they'd go, and the restaurant owner would say, hey, you know what? Another person came in today from the newsletter, right? Now that restaurant owner's thinking of me about how can I make sure somebody's sitting at the bar having a meal, people talk with the bartender, and next thing you know, the person's like, yeah, I'm going to hopefully buy a home soon. Oh, we have a guy that you should talk to that can do your loan for you. You just got to put enough lines out in the water, man, with bait on them. And there's going to be some fish that are going to bite. The other thing that I did, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times, I think, is that about once a year, I would, with a title company who would co-sponsor it, I would rent out a room at the local Hyatt across the freeway from me. And we would, cater in some, like a coffee bar and some desserts. And we would have an evening that would start at 7:30 or 7 o'clock for an hour. And it would be a series of, say, 3 20-minute presentations, one from me, one from an accountant, one from a life insurance agent. And the next one's a financial planner and a home insurance agent and an appraiser. And I would invite my entire client database to this. And I would get 40, 50 people to show up to these events all the time. And then it was my way of making introductions to those other value-added referral sources of mine in a way of reciprocating to them. So, I mean, getting creative with how you utilize this gold mine, that's why I always said that, database management is kind of, in my opinion, the wrong term. It's relationship management. And that's what database management is. It's these are all the relationships I have. How am I going to manage them? How am I going to stay in front of them? How am I going to bring value to them?
Yeah, well, and the reality is, as we look at the future, the person with the largest database, the most number of relationships, that knows how to connect and harness that information will win.
For sure. For sure. What do you do to manage your time? I'm curious about that. I've never talked to you about your time management, but you've got fintech company, you're running, Luminate, you're coaching some people, through us. Right now you're coaching Dave Gallegos. You've got a lot of plates spinning. You have 6 children, all of it. How do you manage your time? What's your systems and your strategies for that?
Well, only sleep 3 to 4 hours a night. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not kidding about that, but that's not why. I think the most important thing is, another word that people hear from me a lot is triage. What are the most important things? And I time block times for all of those important things that are the most important to me, to make sure that, because if I just fill it up with requests, I don't have that many hours. So I just time block it. What are the things that are the most important to me? And I time block time to do those things.
Are there any rules to your time blocking? And by rules, I mean, I find that most people, I've had way more people than I can ever count come to me and say, I've tried time blocking and it doesn't work. And when I unpack it with them and I ask the right questions, What I find the reason is it doesn't work is because they're just time blocking too many things back to back, not leaving any space in between to react to things that just come at you during the day that are important. And then they set themselves up for failure and they start blowing through their time blocks. How do you deal with that?
Exactly like that, and blocking space. So let me shift this as an example to a company, right? And we've got all these quarterly goals for the various departments in a company. And, there's requests from the field, there's requests from legal, requests from compliance. There's all these different things that are coming in. So all of these turn into projects. And then they're saying, okay, well, we're going to get all of this done. I'm like, well, but when are you going to have time for the speed of business items? Right. So you need to at least block out X% of the time for speed of business items. Now, based on that, what is it that we can have? Right. And back to this triage, and you can, look at this. I also go like top 3 to 5. I never want more than 3 to 5 big things at a time. Because you're right, if I time block 400 things, it doesn't matter how much I time block it, something's going to bleed because speed of business happens, something shifts. And there has to be enough space in to just breathe. So I don't know if I should say this on this call because people are always going to my calendar and looking for free time, but every morning there's 2 hours time blocked. That's just my preparation time. And I don't let that be taken up because I need that preparation time to look at, what does this day look like? What is the most important things for me to get done today? And let's make sure that I get those things done today, right? So I have a time every month that I do that for the month. I have a time that I do that for the week. And I have a time every single day to make sure that I'm triaging what it is today. And sometimes you're right. I've looked at my calendar. I'm like, man, I'm so booked today. So, and I've had to reschedule some things like, you know what? No, I'm not going to get through all of that today. These are the 3 most important things for me to do today. So numbers 4, 5, and 6 are going to have to wait.
Yeah, in my conversation with David Allen, which airs tomorrow, who's the author of the New York Times bestselling book, Getting Things Done, a couple of the principles, David used to be my coach, so I'm very familiar with the GTD method and still practice it. A couple of the disciplines that are just ingrained in my work week are I always do a review first thing, as you do. I'll either do it at the end of the day before, and I'll look at tomorrow and say, okay, what do I have and what do I need to prepare for to be successful in taking on what I have tomorrow? Or I'll do it first thing in the morning, depending upon when my day ends and what else I have going on. And then I always do a review at the end of the week to set up next week. The weekly review is really important. I remember, back when I was doing loans and we didn't have technology and I just had a yellow legal pad on my desk. I mean, the very last thing that I would do at night was I would create my to-do list for tomorrow. Just simply write out and prioritize it. So I had a game plan. It's like taking the field, you run through the tunnel, you put your helmet on, you take the field, and you don't know what your first sequence of plays are that you're going to call. Like you're probably not going to score a touchdown on your first drive because you didn't have a plan for it. So I'm really glad to hear that you bring that up. What else do you feel is noteworthy? And when you say, I can't remember the terminology you just used about like the shit that's coming at you, the
Speed of business.
Speed of business. Give us an idea of what a couple of speed of business items are. So just to anchor this in a little bit further for an originator that they need to be thinking about making sure that they have blocks of time to deal with periodically throughout their day.
It could be something that's like, hey, we got the title report back and there's a lien on here that we weren't expecting, or we got the P&L in and underwriting, crucified how this P&L looks. And now they are telling me that my borrower doesn't qualify. Right. And now there's got to be space to handle stuff like that. It just doesn't work. And you'd never know when you're going to get a referral. And, who's not going to drop everything they're doing to handle that referral. Right. So those are the things that are just the speed of business items that happen. And if we don't have space to handle those things, then like you said, then it's very easy for me to like, oh man, I just didn't get anything done today. Well, that's because I didn't leave enough space to get things done. So there has to be space. It goes back to, when you said, let's go find 3 referral sources, I cut it in thirds. I said, well, let's talk about one. So I have this list of things to do. I would say, Tim, you got this yellow pad and here's all the things you want to do tomorrow. But the reality is you're probably not going to do it all tomorrow. because there's going to be speed of business items. So what are the top 2 to 3 that we need to time block some space for? And then we're going to allow for speed of business. And if speed of business doesn't hit you, then you can get further into your list. Like you would remember, Tim, the old Franklin planner, system with little dots and arrows and everything else and ranking things. And everything's ranked in A, but nothing really, half of it doesn't get done. So it really wasn't an A. That's goes back to triage, pick 3 to 5 things, and make those things happen. What really comes up for me when you're talking about this, so I love it though, is it has ramifications and implications that we can apply throughout our entire business. Meaning I'm running my team, right? Loan officer, I'm running my team. When I go in and I work with people with their teams and the efficiency of their teams, and I sit down with a processor, what's the first thing you do in the morning? Like, usually start working on the loan that either A, I had a nightmare about last night, somebody sent me a nasty email on, or some realtor's calling me about. Like, there really isn't a purposeful way to go about it, right? So with my team, I was kind of laughing as you were talking about the yellow pad. It's like every night before everyone went home, I wanted a game plan for tomorrow. And I had everything by my, kind of pulse check dates, right? Here's the deals that need to go, they need to fund, docs out, resubmitted, underwriting submitted, new setups, whatever it is, kind of backwards in priority. And what's your vision for the day? I need you to tell me what the vision is for the day. And that's great, because then I can look at it first thing in the morning, give my stamp of approval, and I can go do business, right? I can go get more loans. That's my job. My job isn't to babysit you. My job is to go get more loans. I can come back at lunch, check in to see how things are going. How far down the list are we? Is there anything that I have to reset, reprioritize, right? And that allows me to be free to actually get things done. And it really isn't any different in any aspect of our lives. It really is about creating a space to get things done that we need, and a space for the unexpected, because it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that there's a centralized theme that's taking place here in a few of your answers, which is this setting yourself up for success, and back to the momentum piece, right? So if you have an unrealistic expectation of what you'll be able to accomplish in your day, and you fall short, you start to lose confidence in yourself. If you are consistently crossing the things off your list that you deem to be mission critical items in that day and getting them done, and maybe even taking on an extra one in those days where you have the space to do it, you have a very opposite effect. You start trusting yourself, and you start to really build momentum and mojo. I remember, since we're just going to keep talking about a long time ago, I remember I had this processor who used to do something really brilliant. She used to, have one of those big title calendars. I'm sure that you remember those, that would sit on her desk, with the box for every day of the month. And when she'd get a file, the first thing that she would do is go through the contract and put in the calendar the different deadlines. She'd handwrite it in pencil, so 2 weeks from today is when I have my appraisal contingency that's due. And 27 days from today is when I need to fund this loan. Okay. And all the other iterations, when she needed to have loan approval by, when she needed to draw docs by, all that. She'd write them into the calendar on those days that it needed to be. And then 2-3 days prior to that, she would write in, I need to submit the loan by this day to have approval by this day. I need to receive the appraisal by this day to have it signed off by this day. I need to draw the docs on this day to have it fund by this day. So when she'd come in the morning, and this is the brilliance behind it, is she could look down at her calendar for that day, and it would tell her the important things that needed to be done that day, because she had logged them in, weeks before. And to me, this is centralized to, because like as David Allen, referring to him again, said, he uses this phrase, we're going to react to whatever's screaming at us the latest and the loudest. Okay. So our ability to truly prioritize what is important is not very good, because we are emotional. So we react to things out of our own fears, out of our own concerns about losing favor, ruining our reputation, and we will elevate something to mission critical and abort something that's truly mission critical in the process. And whatever we can do to try to eliminate some of that emotional experience, I think, is important as well.
Yeah, I love that. People are listening right now thinking, man, you guys are such dinosaurs. We did a very similar thing. I was a little bit better than a title calendar. We did it in a spreadsheet, same way with all those pulse check dates. And it allowed us to kind of, at the beginning of the week too, have a quick pipeline meeting. It's like, what needs to happen this week? Not only each day, but this week. And we could look out and say, well, shit, looks like Thursday we've got 12 submissions. Can you get through 12 submissions to underwriting one day? No. Then we better take some of those and pull them into Wednesday and Tuesday, because otherwise that loan is going to be off track, right? So it's, again, yeah, it's just about an intentionality and planning. And if we do that, I think it'd be interesting. I think a lot of the listeners right now, if they went back and were looking at their teams, a lot of them don't have that level of organization. They just assume that their processor, and there's some amazing processors out there or loan partners out there, got it. But if we could help them be more effective, their quality of life goes up and their capacity goes up to help us.
Yeah, it's a difference between being proactive and reactive, right? But in order to be proactive, you have to have the data. So what you're highlighting is like, to even know that you have 12 submissions on Thursday is a very important data point, because from there you can strategically adjust and proactively attack the issue. But most don't even know. They just come in Thursday and it's like, shit, I don't know how I'm going to get through this day today because I have way more shit to do than I ever could possibly get done. And then it becomes very debilitating and defeating. What are you working on? Shifting gears here a little bit, it would be inappropriate for me to have a conversation with you, of all people, without talking about what you're working on personally. You're a very self-reflective person. We've had many conversations over the years about things that you're working on. Anything that you'd like to share that you're working on in your personal life that you think is noteworthy?
Well, you remember kind of all the way back to Costa Rica, and one of the first things that I focused on was one of my MIGs was radical self-acceptance, that you kind of helped me actually establish, Tim. And, I think I've done a pretty good job of implementing that, but I've moved it to a different level, which is being at peace is kind of what I'm working on right now with all of my relationships. And I've looked at that and said, well, how do I become at peace with the relationships, the turmoil with business partners, with family members, in a second marriage and all of these things? And for me, the biggest aspect is controlling what I can control. And I can only control me. I would like to think that I control everything around me, but I don't. And the biggest aspect of peace is just knowing that I've done my best and I've shown up the way I need to show up. And it's still a challenge because I still have this thought in my mind, right, that I'm not doing enough. I'm not sufficient. And maybe I pick up a bag if somebody lets me know that I'm not sufficient. And I'm really fast to pick up those bags. And I'm still struggling to kind of go through that and go, you know what? No, I just need to be at peace that I've done my effort. And if I could put my head on the pillow at night and feel like I did my part, I did my effort, put in the effort that was my best foot forward, I just have to let the rest of it go.
The similarities continue. I had a coaching session with my coach yesterday. Her name is Nicole. I've been working with her for 12 years. Our sessions are deep and rich, 3 hours in length. And I did an interview earlier this week with my old professor from the University of Santa Monica, Ron Holnick, which will be a podcast in the 360 Experience. And one of the things that I've been looking at deeply this week in particular is this subject matter. So it's very fascinating to me that you brought it up. It occurs to me that in order to move into that place of acceptance that we are doing enough and we don't need to take on more than enough, requires us to get out of our head and into our heart and really feel, truly know. Like it's a knowing, it's not a cerebral experience. It's a heart-centered experience of knowing I am doing the best I can and I have done enough. And then it requires letting go of our righteousness, because sometimes, I'm speaking autobiographically now, is sometimes I find that I'm like pushing a boulder uphill, meaning like I'm trying to get somebody else in my world to see what I'm seeing, or to appreciate me the way that I want to be appreciated, or to think the way that I think. And you know what? That just fucking causes suffering for me every time I'm in that place of trying to influence somebody else to be different, I'm suffering. And to your point, the only thing that I can control is my experience. And what I'm acutely aware of is that my experience is significantly enhanced and better when I let go of the need to be right, the need to be seen, the need to be approved of. And it's quite antithetical to, I think, how, most of us operate. And that in my mind is the work, which is to go inward and continually self-reflect on what is it. Is there anything else, if I check inside with my honest integrity within myself, that I could be doing that I think I'd like to step into and do better or do more of in this interaction? And if the answer is truly no, not from an egoic, righteous perspective, but from no, I think I'm good. Like, I'm happy with how I've shown up. It's from that place that it gets a little bit easier to say, okay, now I'm going to let go and I'm going to make what I'm doing good enough. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's interesting you say that. The path that I went through, it's kind of like in my business world, I always controlled expectations. We talked about that earlier in our chat, right? And I never let anyone control those expectations because it led to resentments. But I was wondering, why do I allow that to happen in my personal life then? Why do I allow those expectations to be set? And going even deeper, are people actually setting those expectations, or am I setting those expectations on myself? Right.
Super important point.
And so for me, it actually still starts in my head, but then it goes to my heart, and it starts in my head that says, what is a reasonable expectation here? And how do I define success for myself? You know what? If I do this, then I'm being successful. Okay, check in my heart. Does that feel good? Does that just resonate with me? If yes, then that becomes kind of my path. And that's kind of the decisioning tree that I use on those types of things.
I think that, first of all, as Noah Levine, who was on my show late last year, used a very provocative phrase. He said, the mind is a fucking liar, and there's so much truth. I have another teacher of mine named Kate, who I heard once say, the mind never to be trusted, and it's like, there's a great degree of wisdom to that. There's a lot of stories we make up, including stories that we make up about what others are expecting of us that are actually not factual. And it takes some bravery, but the appropriate approach is to just ask, like, are you needing more from me? Because I'd like to talk about that, because that's what I'm feeling, but I'm not clear on whether or not that's your expectation of me. Boy, do we put a lot of pressure on ourselves with false expectations that we think that we're having to adhere to, yeah, that's beautiful. I think,
what I found, Tim, is for me personally, what was happening is I was looking for opportunities to try to feel good about myself. So I was overextending myself. I was trying to excel beyond expectations. And not only that, but I started sacrificing things, whether that's time, money, or whatever it may be, for people who didn't even ask for them.
mm-hmm.
And then I became resentful if I didn't get appreciation for something that I sacrificed that they didn't even ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that awareness was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, you're such an idiot, bro. Like, don't do that. You need to be good with yourself and then look at and just think about this stuff. Every time something is there, like, who's asking for it? Are they really asking for it? What is a reasonable expectation? Cool. I feel good about that in my heart. Perfect. Then that's what we're going to do.
Boy, does that resonate.
I was making shit up all the time.
That totally resonates for me, man. Same thing. Like, and what I'm acutely aware of is, like, whenever I'm triggered, whenever I'm upset because this person isn't acknowledging me in the way that I was hoping to be acknowledged, it's a clue. It's a clue that it's something inside of me that I need to look at, which is, am I out there seeking approval? And to your point, from a time management perspective, am I, through that seeking of approval, setting myself up consistently for disappointment and overwhelm because I'm trying to be everything to everybody and I'm nothing to anyone?
And they might not be asking for it, and probably aren't.
Have you ever like have you practiced that where you have had the awareness of, oh, wait a minute, I might be making up a story. At USM, there's a great phrase, which is you don't have to believe everything that you think. So it's like questioning the thinker and asking, okay, do I know this to be fact that they expect this from me? And then have you done anything with like actually confirming?
I have become incredibly brave in those conversations. I think if you ask the people that are the closest to me, they almost get annoyed now that I'm checking in with those things. Because I just want clarity. Because I just want peace, you know, and I look back in my life and some of the mistakes that I've made. And, you know, I missed a significant part of my six children's lives when they were younger because I was so focused in everything besides the things that now I deem more important than anything, that now it's just I'm not willing to make the mistakes anymore. So I'd rather slow down, triage it, prioritize things, and, you know, and execute.
Talk to me about the bravery. Like, what was the fear? If you can go back to when prior to you having these brave conversations, what was the fear? What was the story behind the fear? And then what did you do to wade in the shallow end and then eventually get into the deep end with just asking?
Well, you know, I think the fear was mostly made up, right? It was that I feared that people that I cared about would tell me that I wasn't sufficient if I didn't perform to this level. And I believed that about myself. And I didn't want them to prove me right. Right. I wanted to hold on to this type of thing. And so, you know, as we going through and you mentioned the reading and, you know, one of the greatest phrases ever, right? The treasure that you seek is hidden in the cave that you fear to enter.
The cave that you fear to enter holds the treasures that you seek by Joseph Campbell.
Yeah.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
said it
you did.
in the opposite order.
Said
Yeah.
it the opposite or the
Yeah.
right way, but I did
Yeah.
it backwards. But it's
Yeah.
the same concept, right?
Yes, of course.
And so that was the whole aspect of wading into the shallow part of the pool is like if these relationships and wanting peace in those relationships is truly what you want, like there's only one place to go get it. And it's in that cave that you fear to enter, which is being brave enough to let people know, like, this is how I'm feeling. Is that really what you mean? Or simply just being brave enough to say, this is all I can do. And being willing at that point in time to, if it so happens that those individuals like, fuck you, that's not good enough for me, I hate you, to be okay with that because I want the peace. You know, now the good news is that hasn't happened because all of that was in my head again.
Yeah. I was going to say,
But it's
well,
still, I did truly get to a place, Tim, that I didn't care. Like this, I'm just going to communicate, and you're going to think I'm weird. You're going to think I'm like overly emotional or something, but it doesn't matter. I just need peace. And so that was the place the cave that I feared to enter. And, but it has become the unlocking of the treasure that I needed.
beautiful. Yeah, and if the person it does say fuck you and like I need more from you than that, then that's information. And that's really important information that maybe this isn't a relationship that I should be engaging fully in anymore. I want to be careful when I say that because I think people can, from an egoic perspective, abort relationships prematurely because they'll get their head wrapped around the concept that we're talking about right now, and then they'll just start Xing people out of their life. And I don't think that's particularly realistic. I think though that if you can go again back into your heart and really feel like, okay, am I excelling in this relationship in the ways that I feel good about that allow me to rest at night and know that I'm doing the best I can and I don't have any more to give, but I'm giving as fully as I can. And then you bravely approach somebody and ask them to kind of create some to reset the expectations, perhaps. Like I might have some expectations that are made up in my head, and I just want to like establish true expectations of what you're looking for me in this relationship. I think that, more often than not, that's going to be a very reasonable conversation. Every once in a while, you might have somebody who's just so steeped in their own needs that they ask of things of you that you cannot provide. And again, that would be a point where you'd be like, okay, maybe this relationship needs to be reconsidered.
Well, I love what you're saying there, Tim, because I don't cut people out. The way that I view it is they just choose not to be a part of my world today. right? So when I went through my divorce and I started, working on a new relationship, my oldest son didn't talk to me for a year and a half.
I remember. I remember
Yeah.
how painful that was.
And it was hard because what I wanted to do, what my brain was telling me is like, dude, fuck you, man. I paid your, how many things have I bailed you out of? I paid your way. I make your world go around and this is how you treat me.
Hmm. Hmm.
I was like, it's all right. The kid's hurting. And that's not the relationship I want. The peace that I want is just to constantly let him know, I miss you. I love you.
Mm.
I miss the relationship with my son, right? A year and a half later, he came back. And if I would have cut him out because I was triggered and I was hurt, because in my mind, right, I could have very easily taken that as a sign of, see, people only care about me if I can provide for them. I could have proved myself right and I could have destroyed that relationship forever. Well, now it's been, a year and a half he's been back and it's been amazing.
Wow. Yeah, I needed to hear that. Thank you very much. And on top of how much that deeply resonates with me, I'm aware of the fact that how interesting it is that the mind, left to its own devices, will seek to make itself correct. So if in this particular example you gave, you allowed the mind to just run the show the entire time, you'd be probably operating from that place of, see, this is all that anybody really wants from me. And you're just validating that false story that you've been running for a long time. This is where self-awareness comes in and really slowing things down and taking a deeper look and getting curious with our thoughts. Do you need more referral partners right now? When I was a $230 million producer, I executed on specific strategies that helped me develop relationships with realtors, accountants, financial planners, and life insurance agents. And I've now put it into a product called the Complete Referral Partner Success System. Gang, these are strategies that my clients are using successfully right now, real time, to give them a competitive edge. And for podcast listeners only, we're knocking $400 off the price. Normally it's $899. For podcast listeners, it's only $499. Use the link in the podcast show notes below or go to www.performance-experts.com to find out more. Once again, www.performance-experts.com. And we hope that you are enjoying this episode of the 360 Experience. If you were to, I like to ask this question of most of my guests. So if we could get you into a time machine and take you back to the age of 18 and you're able to dialogue with the younger you, knowing what you know now, what are some of the things that you would share with him that you think would be noteworthy and valuable?
I'm probably going to give you a different answer than maybe you've had on that. And that is, because people have asked me that, like, with my company that I lost in the financial meltdown, and I was offered a ridiculous amount of money for it before I lost it. Like, would you go back and do it differently? Would you take that money, right? And of course, there's a logical side of these things that say, yeah, I'd love to do all these things differently. But here's the way I look at it, Tim, is that I like the person that I am today. And I don't know that I would have been the same person that I am today if I wouldn't have gone through everything that I've gone through.
Mm-hmm.
So, sure. I mean, on one side, I would love to tell the younger me to have space between stimulus and response. Tell the younger me to, you know, control what you can control. Don't tell yourself stupid stories. Don't try to overextend yourself to get accolades and things like that. But in the grand scheme of things, would that then alter the learning that happened, right? Each of these things that happen to us, like a refiner's fire, right? It burns out an imperfection, burns out an impurity. I don't know. If I'm happy with the person that I am today, I have to embrace the journey that's led me here. I mean, yeah, I'd love to go about, again, on one side, relationships and treat those a lot differently than I did. And I didn't like myself as to how I showed up. But the learning that I had, would I've ever learned that? And what would the trajectory be if I would have told that to my 18-year-old self in the time machine? So I don't know. I just kind of embrace the experience that's been there. And I think the only aspect isn't would I do it differently? The aspect I choose to view is what am I going to do differently because of it, rather than what would I like to do over?
Yeah, that's beautiful. So only, once again, fixating yourself on what you can do going forward, right? You can't rewind the clock and look in the rear. The more time you spend looking in the rearview mirror, you're not moving forward. What have I not asked you that I should have asked you in this conversation as we wind it down?
I don't know. I think we've been fairly expansive in our dialogue. We've gone a lot of different places.
Yeah, we have. The originator that is functioning in this market, I guess I want to say, and maybe you could speak to that person as well. This is a part of the process. I know that's probably a little difficult for you to hear, thinking, well, you're sitting there on camera, not slinging loans, but I've been there, and I've been there several times. And these are the markets where our muscle of resourcefulness and creativity can be strengthened dramatically if we choose to focus on those things. We become quite atrophied in our creativity and our resourceful nature in a heavy refi market that doesn't really require us to do much other than answer the phone. Anything that you would like to share with the listener as a kind of a final parting message?
There's kind of that old adage, you find yourself in a tunnel, the worst thing that you can do is sit down, right? So it has been tough. I would say that, coming from a couple of old people like us in the industry, it's cyclical. It will end. This has been prolonged. It really has been brutal, but it will end. Good times will come back. They always do. And in the meantime, what do you have to do? Keep moving, redefine success, take small wins, get that momentum, go back to the basics, go back to the things that made you successful in the very beginning. It's been interesting talking to originators like, I don't have business. Like, you could get business. Go out and see new referral sources, go pass out flyers at the, grocery store type of thing. We forget to go stick to the basics, and it'll get us through. And don't be distracted by easy outs, right? I see originators like, oh, well, when are we going to get this new product? When are we going to get this? Boy, if my rates were just better. Yeah, sure, that would be great. If I had a magic wand, I'd do all kinds of great things. But in the meantime, control what you can control. Take small steps, get the momentum behind you. You'll get through, and you'll be stronger because of it.
Beautiful, beautiful response. And I'll just add that I think this redefinition of success subject matter that we've talked about throughout this conversation is so critically important. Our definitions of success 2 years ago are very unrealistic to the definitions of success today. And it's a setup if you're still operating off that old definition. Mike, thank you for your time, your wisdom. Such a pleasure to hang with you, bro.
My pleasure, Tim. Love talking to you always.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you next week, brother, in Texas.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, buddy.
See you soon.
Have a beautiful day. Okay.
Bye.